Hello everybody. We have a game with the black pieces um, against Tepunim, rated 1265. We're almost at 1300. We're getting there. Let's move 2. Are we going to see c4 or a London? Maybe. They're both pretty common. We usually get more Londons. I don't know why this guy's thinking on move 2. Okay. Well, if he plays c4, okay, neither. He goes for Jobava London. Fine. We are just going to play d5 and prevent him from playing e4, which the knight supports. And now we both have a pawn and a knight developed. The only thing is this knight is in front of his c-pawn when you generally want it behind the c-pawn. He's going to... Okay, it's not even the Jobava London, it's just a random opening. 2 knights out first. Okay, so it's very non-threatening. You don't have to be afraid. So we're just going to develop our bishop to f5, a very nice diagonal, so that we can close the pawn chain, develop our pieces and castle. He develops his dark squared bishop and hits the knight. The knight isn't pinned because we didn't move any of the pawns yet, which means we can move the knight if we want. It's interesting, and normally I might jump it in here, but I actually don't want to get him to move this knight and free up the c-pawn. You know, he made a mistake by putting it in front. I don't want to fix his mistake. So instead, I'm just going to develop a minor piece and support the other knight. Supports the center, supports e5 or c5 pawn pushes, and does not block my own c-pawn. Now this bishop, it's a little weird here. He plays h3, which doesn't make any sense because I already developed my bishop. It's not like it was going to g4. So it's basically a waste of a move unless he's anticipating me kicking this and wants some type of route. So I'll kick it. It's a free move that creates luft potentially if I castle kingside. It controls a square from his minor pieces and it's free. It also creates a safe haven for my bishop in case he attacks it for free. So he moves the bishop, doesn't want to trade. Now he's coordinating in the Jobava London style, potentially trying to attack this pawn. It's not scary at this point. I mean, it's never scary, but it's definitely not scary when you have a move like rook c8 available. But even so, I'm going to play a very slow prophylactic move, a6, just so he never has this knight jump in the future. I do want to move my c-pawn. I'll likely move my e-pawn, which would leave this d6 square vulnerable. And so if the knight gets here, you never want him to have any pressure. Again, a6, not necessary. I always like to include it in these Jobava London setups, just so his knight is totally useless. I think that's fair. And we have kind of symmetrical position. The only difference is our knight position. I included the move a6, but it's his turn, so I doubt he's going to go a3 and copy me because that wouldn't make any sense. Okay, so he goes with the standard e3, opening up the light square bishop. Makes a lot of sense. I want to open up my dark square bishop. So I'm also going to play e6 so I can develop. Now he strikes out with g4, harassing my bishop, weakening his king side, although he might castle the other way. Okay, our bishop's under attack. We do want to move it. We don't want to necessarily trade it for his knight for no reason. So let's save it to the safe haven that we created earlier. Now it's nice little in the cubby hole, and because it's behind the pawn structure instead of in front of it, it cannot be harassed by enemy pawns. Maybe he wants to push. Okay, he does not push. He moves his queen up, telegraphing queenside castle. That's fine. We are going to... Okay, so I'm going to anticipate he's going this way. Normally, you don't want to move the pawns in front of your king where you're castled. So I'm going to provoke with a developing move, right? This is a developing move, pins the knight, and provokes a pawn move on that side of the board, which gives me a hook to attack if he castles that way. So I'm actually... The bishop's being hit, so your instinct is to move it. But I pin the knight not only to provoke a pawn move, because I saw I can add immediate pressure with my other piece, my other knight. So now I'm going to ignore his threat and jump my knight in. This hits the queen and the knight, right? If he takes my bishop, he loses the queen. If he takes my knight, he loses the queen. So he has to move the queen. But now it's no longer on a dark square, protecting the knight. If he wants to touch the knight, he has to go to d3 to keep it protected, but that walks into bishop discoveries, which is probably worse. So this knight is now hit twice, and basically it's only going to be defended once. That's devastating. So he decides to defend it twice by moving the queen up, but like I said, that walks into discoveries. For example, this knight takes pawn, opens the discovery, and hits the rook. This knight jump hits the rook. This knight jump wins the knight immediately, right? Because the queen has to do something, and then you have discovered checks with the bishop. So it's just like whichever one you go for, whichever one you go for is just really bad for him. So he resigns, which is the right move. It's only move 11, but that's okay. So let's go through the game. Okay, d4 pawn opening. We like to respond with knight f6 and oftentimes c5, depending on what they do. They bring the knight out, which defends the center and attacks the center, and it prepares e4. So in this case, I don't want to play c5 and allow him to play e4. So I want to stop e4. So I just take control over my share of the center and stop e4 from being played, and I can always play c5 next, or at a later date in the next 10 moves. So he develops a piece towards the center, and we have development in center. He develops, and we have development and center. He does this weird move, and now we have a free move, a free threat that does so many things. It attacks something, it's prophylaxis against his pieces coming to that square, it creates a cubby hole for our bishop and potential lift for our king, all for free. So it's a free move. And then this is the only move that you don't need to really play. You could argue is a waste of a move. I wouldn't really fight back much, but it's also a great move to include. I don't think, like, yeah, you could play c6. Yeah, you could play e6. Yeah, you can, I don't know. I guess those are the main moves. But all of those moves are better with the inclusion of a6. I don't know. So a6 is great to me. And again, the main idea with a6 is to stop this coordination. So these two pieces would coordinate on these two squares, and a6 cuts that out, and always cuts out. Because I always like to play for e6, c5 pawn structure, so it also cuts out bishop coming there. So it's a useful move, but it does not, e6 you can play as well. But I just play e6 next, which is development and center. And now forcing move, you gotta do something. Now if you put on the analysis board, like I'm not up any material, It only says I'm minus 0.5, so half a pawn better, which makes sense because my position looks better. He made these weird pawn advances. I figured maybe he's gonna try something like this. The arrows may block your vision, but thinking like, oh, if I take the pawn, he's gonna jump the knight in and mess with my bishop again. But if I take the pawn, I also have an open H file, so that's increases the power of my rook. Also, there's this knight e4 move, which I was looking at. I wasn't sure what happens after, oops, not push. Knight e4 takes. Okay, so the key move was g5. That's why I wasn't sure what happens. So g5 is supported twice. And then he's going to move the bishop somewhere. Not my favorite. I kind of like just the taking option. If he takes with the knight, you could move the bishop, but I mean it is a good diagonal, so you probably want to move it. But yeah, I just like black's position much better here. Okay, so let's turn the off. Okay, so he didn't do that. He went for this queenside castling thing. But now I'm going here, and this creates lots of threats of this because he pinned himself. So this move doesn't work because of what I did in the game. Also, let's say we didn't have this. You know, like a typical move you might say to yourself is, oh, my bishop's being attacked. I don't want to trade it for the knight. Let me go to bishop d6, which looks like the most active square. If he takes, you get to support your center in an amazing way, covering these two squares from his knight. But I would override that like auto move. Like bishop d6 is like an auto move. I would override that even in favor of bishop a5, which normally I would not play, especially with my c-pawn blocking this diagonal. But if I go bishop a5, A, that maintains the pin, threatening the knight thing again. B, I'm provoking him to play b4 because I know he's going to do that. And then I'm going to go bishop b6, and although my bishop looks bad temporarily, I do have a5 and c5 to free it, as well as even c6 and just bringing it to c7. But the whole point of that operation is just to get him to put his pawns here. And now if he has pawns on a3, b4, h3, and g4, his king won't be safe. And whichever way he castles, I'm going to attack the most forward pawns that he has with my pawns and force lines open. So that's why I would override the auto move with bishop a5, but I'm overriding bishop a5 with the knight jump because it clearly wins. Then he goes here, and I'm just curious, which one of the knight jumps is best? So knight g3 is -3, knight takes knight is -3, even bishop takes knight is -3. They're all -3, it doesn't matter. Okay, but he resigned. So moral of the story, don't play Jobava London unless you did a chess level course, you kind of know some lines, blah blah blah. Period. Don't put this knight in front of the c pawn, put it behind the c pawn or somewhere else. Okay, see, moral of the story, you just learned it, you're a better chess player. Congratulations. Good luck in your chess games. I will see you in the next video.